On Christmas Eve, in a crowded grocery, a manager slices open a struggling man's bag after his card declines, humiliating him. The closing supervisor risks her job and money to override the register and walk him out with his food, and she's suspended on the spot. Quiet changes ripple through the store and her life as she glimpses the man's hidden burdens and later sees a small light left on. Before we get started, tap like, share, and subscribe to join the journey. And tell me, where in the world are you watching? Drop your country below. I love seeing the global trail of these stories. The store manager dragged a box cutter down the plastic bag cradled in the older man's hands. A seam split, a can of peaches thumped to the tile. A carton of milk hit and exploded into a white fan. "Put it back if you can't pay," he said, voice on a mic, each word loud under the carols. He held the man's blue EBT card between two fingers like a weird bug, declined 3 times. "Step aside." He yanked a red paper angel cart sticker off a frozen turkey and flicked it toward the trash. The line went silent. The older man stared at the milk spreading toward his boots. The closing supervisor was 5 feet away, restocking her batteries, hands cold from the door runs. She saw the boy in the next cart look away. She saw phones half raised. She knew the cameras overhead would catch everything, including her. 3 days ago, she'd signed a final warning for leaving early. When her kid had a fever, rent was due on the 1st. She needed the holiday hours. The manager wasn't a monster. He was tired, wearing a blue tie he never untied, jaw tight. Corporate had been on him about shrink. "No more freebies," the email said in bold. She had read it over his shoulder. She also saw the man in the frayed parka, the way his hands shook, but he kept standing upright. She knew the code that would make all of it stop. She knew using it would flag an audit. She knew he'd come for her badge. She walked into the lane. "I'll take this one," she said to the teen cashier, keeping her voice flat. She slid her key into the slot, turned it. The screen beeped. She hit 910. The old courtesy code they weren't supposed to use anymore. "Courtesy applied," the screen said in green. She bent, scooped up the cold can of peaches, wiped it with a paper towel, and set a new milk on the scale. "Stay with me," she said to the man. Quiet. He smelled like wet wool and mint gum. He didn't look at her. He stared at the ruined bag like it might speak. She swiped her own debit card for the rest. The numbers on the screen hurt to look at. She felt the pinch in her stomach and hit approve. The receipt spit out, and she signed her name hard enough to dent the paper. "What are you doing?" the manager said. Not a question, more a breath. He dropped the card to the counter. "Courtesy. Under my number," she said. "You can write me up." "There's no courtesy during holiday shrink," he said. He looked past her to the cameras, then at the line. His voice dropped. "You don't get to decide this. I just did." She kept packing, double-bagging the eggs, tucking the bread on top. The teen cashier stood straighter. Someone behind them murmured, "Come on, it's Christmas," and then went quiet. "Badge," he said finally. His face had gone a little red. He didn't yell. He held out his hand. "Key. You're suspended pending review." She took off her lanyard. The keys were warm from her skin. She put them in his hand like they were something fragile. Her chest went hot and then cold. She forced her mouth to stay still. Security drifted over, bored-looking in their black jackets. They didn't touch her. The manager pointed toward the office. "Clock out," he said. "We'll talk after the holiday." She nodded once. Then she lifted the box of groceries and looked at the man. "Come with me," she said. "Let's get you out of this line." They went to the side door by the stockroom where the air smelled like cardboard and oranges. She found a clean box and folded it, taped the bottom, lined it with 2 paper bags. She replaced the milk and turkey, added the peaches, the cranberries, the little jar of nutmeg he'd grabbed off the impulse shelf. She tied the handles with twine so they wouldn't split again. She reached into the impulse rack and grabbed the cheap tabletop tree, the one with the pre-lit strands that ran off a watch battery. $9. She scanned it, swiped her card again. Her phone buzzed with the text alert, "Balance low." She pressed her thumb against the screen until it stopped. "Do you have a ride?" she asked. He shook his head. "Bus," he said. The word caught. He had a soft voice that didn't match the grey stubble on his jaw. "It's sleeting," she said. She pulled her coat on, thin puffer with a broken zipper. "I'll drive you. I'm off now anyway." They went out into the lot. Snow blew sideways under the lamps, tiny needles on the skin. She set the box in the back seat of her dented sedan and turned on the heat. Her hands stung as they warmed up. He sat quiet, hat in his lap. His parka smelled like smoke and something clean, like laundry soap. He coughed once into his elbow. "Address?" she said. He handed her a folded paper with a bus schedule and a scribbled cross street. The paper had a hospital visitor sticker, crinkled and used. "ICU dated yesterday." She didn't say anything about it. She pulled out of the lot and the wipers squeaked until the windshield stopped freezing over. "She likes the peaches in syrup," he said after a block, "not the ones in juice. They stay." She nodded. The phrase lodged somewhere in her throat. The light at the corner went green, and no one moved, like the whole street had to remind itself how to go. He pointed to an apartment building with a crooked wreath on the front door. The windows were dark, except for a strip of blue light from a TV. She parked and killed the engine. "Thank you," he said. He bent to lift the box and faltered. She took the heavier side, without comment, and carried it up the stairs. The hallway smelled like dust and fried onions. She set the box on a chair inside a narrow doorway, next to a stack of medical bills held together with a rubber band. He pulled the cheap tree from the box like it might break. His hands shook, but he snapped the base on and clicked the battery pack. The lights came on pale yellow. He looked at it for a long second, the glow soft on his face. She wrote her name and phone number on the back of the receipt. "If anything at the register ever goes wrong again, call me," she said. It felt dumb as soon as she said it. She didn't have a register anymore. He slipped the receipt into a leather wallet that had been patched with tape. A photograph showed in the plastic window a woman with bright eyes under a knit hat, cheeks flushed pink, a hospital gown just out of frame. A kid's drawing was tucked beside it, a crooked heart that said, "Nana, come home. You take care," she said. Her voice was steady now. "You too," he said. He touched the tree switch like he might save the light for later and then left it on. 2 days later she came back for her check. The front end was calmer, even with the post-holiday returns. A handwritten sign sat at the end of lane 4. "We can hold your card for 24 hours. No charge." Someone had drawn a small star next to it in blue marker. The teen cashier from that night had a shoebox by her feet labeled gloves and wipes. She was offering them to anyone who needed to rebag. "They're free," she kept saying, like she needed to practice the words. The manager stood at the self-check, talking to a man whose card machine kept erroring. He didn't touch the man's bags. He walked him to customer service and told the next person, "I'll be right back." His tie was wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept. He saw her by the time clock and lifted his hand a little. Not a wave, more like a truce. A small piece of tape covered the register message that used to flash DCL'd in red. Now it just beeped and said, "See attendant," in decent-sized letters that didn't shout. The noise felt kinder. On her way out, she noticed a memo taped near the schedule. "Hold shelf locations. How to start a courtesy voucher." It was written in simple steps with pictures. No one had signed it. At home, a white envelope waited in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a note with shaky handwriting. She smiled at the tree. "Thanks for the peaches." Below it, a photo printed at the drugstore. Just a window in a dark room, a pale yellow glow behind cheap blinds. She stood by her kitchen window with her coat still on and the note open on the counter. Snow pushed against the glass in slow waves. Her kid was asleep down the hall, a soft snore under a heap of blankets. She thought about the box cutter, the milk, the moment his hands shook around a tree that cost $9. She turned off her kitchen light and watched the building across the alley. In one of the windows, a small yellow blink flickered on and on, steady even as the wind pressed at it.